this is kind of like what started, I'd say, well, let me take a step back. This is probably what started my career into music, because in 91 when Volcom was founded, I was 14, 15, living in Big Bear. I grew up in Big Bear Lake, snowboarding. Yeah. My mom ran the children's ski school up there. And so I was very, like, always going to the mountain after school to snowboard. That was like, you know, well, ski at the time. Snowboarding wasn't even a thing. And then eventually snowboarding became legal up at the Mesa Resort because you couldn't do it, essentially. Yeah. But I was big into skateboarding and was always, you know, had a backyard ramp. So all, like, people would come over to my backyard and we'd just skate and whatever.
That's sick.
And so when I first met these founders, I was like, and totally just engaged. I loved everything about it. This guy Marco, he's one of my mentors for sure. He ran the children's ski school, and that's basically where I met him. And he was good friends with sort of this whole crew. That's him up there too.
Cool.
He used to work in like the Sim Snowboard Factory and was just like in the early days of snowboarding. So he had introduced me to these guys who at the time really didn't, that was before Volcom was even founded. So we just kind of grew a natural relationship.
Yeah.
The founder of Volcom, Richard Wolcott, worked at Quicksilver at the time, and he sponsored me for snowboarding at Quicksilver when I was really young. So that's how I met him, kind of got inspired by it. And then, you know, fast forward, the brand started growing pretty quick. And in 93, Volcom put out its first snowboard movie, which was basically the first movie I'd ever been in. I have a little photo right here.
Red. That's you right there?
This is me right here, yeah. Dude, up at Mount Hood.
How old were you right there?
I'd say I was 16.
Holy crap,
16?
Dude. That's awesome.
16 and a half, you know. I graduated in 94, and this came out in 93. And I was like, you know, my birthday was late, so I was 17 when I graduated. Okay. So somewhere around 16-ish, I'd say.
Nice.
But I grew up, these were like, you know, Brian Noguchi was like my friend I grew up with in Big Bear. You know, Jamie Lynn, still super close with him. He's a legend of snowboarding. And just Mike Perillo, this guy I grew up with in Big Bear too, but he's done amazing artwork. This is actually one of his first pieces that he did in 95, but now he does like Travis Rice's, you know, LibTech graphics and real high-end art. It's incredible what he does now. So anyway, that was sort of the first piece, right? And then, so 93, and I'm like, great, I'm getting into snowboarding, I can do this. Then we did another snowboard movie in 94 called The Garden, which is this film right here. And The Garden was like iconic for its soundtrack.
Okay.
Like back in the day, I have a poster I think downstairs, but it had like Neil Young and like Jimi Hendrix and Pink Floyd, and still today, it's like considered one of the most iconic snowboard films.
Yeah.
The 30-year anniversary is this year.
Amazing.
So we have a cool little like, you know, tribute to it and little product collection around it. But anyway, that artwork was done by Mike Perillo, the artist, and then also was sort of my kind of chance of like, hey, like, you know, we want you to be like a feature in this film. This is like your moment. And of course, like, I was like, okay, like, let's go. I'm all up for it.
Yeah.
And in the process of being a kid, I was also getting into music. You know, luck would have it, of course, I was just doing my thing. Got hurt. It was a mammoth, you know, messed my knee up and was just like super bummed. But that sort of like, it brought me into more of the music world, kind of gave me more ability to focus on the music. So basically through that point, 95 was basically when we started what at the time was Stone Entertainment. So like basically this photo was taken at Bear Mountain, it's in Big Bear, at what was the Outlaw Snowboard Park, which is like the first actual snowboard park in the world, really. Like Mike Perillo, again, the guy, the artist, he was the guy that designed the first snowboard park called the Outlaw Snowboard Park. Wow. So like literally the first one in the world. Like I'm not exaggerating. People weren't doing that back then.
Right. And
the guy, John Rice, who's amazing, who's also up at Sierra Tahoe now, really awesome. I think he was the general manager of Bear Mountain at the time. Anyway, he just had the vision and was like so down and like really let Mike create his sort of artwork on the snow. And so this was on the top of this, you know, big kicker, essentially.
Cool.
Like a, you know, big tabletop jump, essentially. And this came from basically went on a snowboard trip, 93, 94, where we played out in Utah. There was a magazine called Plow, was back in the day, one cool little endemic mag. And there was a bunch of, there was an editorial feature with me and the bass player, Rich, snowboarding, and then also playing a show that we played in this like super cold like tent in the middle of like, I think it was in Park City or something, but man, it was super cold. And so anyway, when that came back, I had a contract, I had photo incentive, and I had about I don't know, a couple grand or something. And I went to Richard Wilcox, the founder of Volcom, and just said, hey, would you want to put I'll put my money in that you owe me, you put some in, and we'll go record a record. I said, we just went and did a demo. It was like, $1,000, like 4 songs, like so quick, we could knock this thing out, like no problem. And he's like, yeah. And so me and the band, we just went straight to like, we were huge punk rock fans. So it was like, where's No Effects recording? Where's Better? Like the bands that were sort of defining our generation. And it was like, oh, West Beach, okay, Hollywood. And we just, phone book, like, West Beach, cool, call them. And that's basically how we got a hold of the studio at the time. Sick. Steve Kravac, who produced the first record, he had just finished Dude Ranch from Blink. He was like this Canadian guy, like kind of like just the in-house guy, but like was getting sort of that work. Yeah. And I mean, the studio at the time, it was all analog. We did it all on 2-inch. We rolled in there thinking we knew what the fuck was up. Like, we're killing it. We're like, friggin' teenagers from Big Bear, like we know everything about music production. Solid state, combo amps with a freaking like Squire, like just the worst possible equipment you can have. But we thought we were killing it. And he quickly sort of educated us on what we didn't know, which was awesome. And we had this older drummer. It's pretty crazy. I don't know if it's a story for this podcast. But anyway, the short version of the story is the first night in the studio, we went in, our drummer was like 10, 15 years older than us. We ended up staying in this like dive Hollywood hotel with like hookers and crackheads and stuff. And he had his own problems. He ended up staying up all night with the hookers and crackheads. Oh, man. We ended up staying in our room middle of the night, which we didn't even check into until like 3 a.m. when the cops busted in looking for like some other drug dealer crackhead. And we were just like, what the fuck are we doing? And again, kids from Big Bear thinking like we're killing it. Yeah. And that was the only night we stayed in Hollywood during making this record, which was probably like, I don't know, 7 to 9 days maybe at the time. Oh, wow. So we made the record, was awesome. We learned a lot. We were bummed on our drummer, but he obviously left the band shortly after finishing the record. Yep. And then we got our friend who was his own interesting character. But something about drummers, man, I don't know what it is. Like we've had a different drummer every record, and every time we've got our best one out. My son's a drummer now. And
so he's playing with you, right?
Yeah, he plays in our bands, and our last drummer, like officially before my son took over, is still one of my best friends, if not, he is one of 2. So amazing human. But yeah, we always had like bad luck with drummers for whatever reason. So cute. Interesting that we're having that with this particular conversation. Yeah, for sure. So this was 95. I said, let's start a label, which he agreed. We made the record. We called it Stone Entertainment, and shot this in Big Bear. And then that was basically the start of it. And when it started, it was like Volcom was at sort of, the industry was really taking off, and the brand was in a good spot, and Volcom was really popular in a lot of places. And the fact we were putting music out was pretty unique. There was, Sessions was another brand, like clothing brand / entertainment that was doing cool stuff too. And a lot of props to them because they did some really great stuff, and I definitely was inspired by that. I think they did like some really cool singles and 7 inches, or same thing, but with some pretty established bands, which I always aspired to do too, which was part of like, we nurtured a relationship with Pearl Jam over the years, and Volcom Entertainment ended up doing some bigger, like higher end stuff with some more well-known artists. But anyway, when the label was founded, that was really the beginning of, this chapter.